Good morning, Eastern Mennonite High School. So on Monday we were thinking about two people that influenced my own life, and if you remember I was speaking in the chapel on Monday about that, about Dr. Jack Kelly, who influenced my life, and about Jesus, who influenced my life, and I told one or two stories there too. Then yesterday morning we were exploring together the two Bethanies in John 11, and we were chatting together about what the word Bethany means. And the word Bethany means house of affliction. And I was telling you two stories, one story of Keith and the other of Bill, who were people that I had encountered who had been very much afflicted by the things that life had thrown them. And then gave some examples out of my own church's experience with dealing with people who are afflicted. So today we have another of the twos. Monday, two people. Yesterday, two Bethanies. And here this morning in the passage we're going to be thinking together about two loves. Two loves. So I'm going to read a little of John 11, and if you have access to a Bible, maybe you would like to grab it and come and read it with me, or alternatively you can just be there at the other end of the camera lens and hear me read it to you. So John 11, and starting at verse 1. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, "This illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. And we'll leave the reading right there. So you've got two mentions of love in that passage. The first one, so the sisters sent to him saying, "Lord, he whom you love is ill." And then later on in the passage, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister Mary and Lazarus. So two mentions of love. And the Greek word behind the English word love in the text, the Greek words are different. So in the first mention of love, Lord, he whom you love, the word is philios. That's a Greek word, and it has a very specific meaning. So the word love there is about human friendships, about the kind of mutual, reciprocal love that exists between two people that you might have in a brother-sister relationship, a friend-to-friend relationship, the kind of exchangeable love. You do something for them, they do something for you. It's reciprocal and it's mutual. It's to the mutual benefit of each of the parties. And so when it's mentioned here in the passage, Lord, he whom you love is sick, it's making a reference to the love that Jesus had for Lazarus and Lazarus had for Jesus. Now here's something quite interesting that I've never thought about before. That Jesus here, as John the Gospel writer speaks about Jesus' relationship with Lazarus and Lazarus' relationship with Jesus, is highlighting Jesus' own need for human friendship. That Jesus is so vulnerable at times that he needs a human friend. That's a very interesting thing to explore and discover more about. And I'd encourage you to spend some time thinking about that. In the same way that each one of us need friends. You can't go through a whole life on your own as an individual doing your own thing. We all need a friend. We all need to be able to receive love and to give love. And that's what's mentioned here in this little bit of John 11. The second mention of love, the Greek word behind the second mention, where it says, now Jesus loved Mary and her sister and Lazarus. The Greek word behind that is a word that is agape or agapos, and that means God's love or divine love or non-reciprocal love or not mutual love but one-sided love. So that kind of love doesn't need the other party to give love in order for love to work. In the same way that God doesn't need our love to galvanise him into loving us. It's one-sided. It's God's love towards us. And here in this chapter 11, the Gospel writer is making the differentiation between human love and divine love. And it's mentioned of Jesus in this passage that he loved like ordinary human beings loved, and he also loves like God loves. There's something quite wonderful about the two examples of love. Now that helps us as we look at John 11. It kind of helps us think about love in a much bigger and a much more fuller way. I'll give you some examples. So, how does the church react or act with these two kinds of love? So my church has taken this on very, very seriously. How do we receive and give love, friendship, partnership? How do we come alongside other people and receive and give the love that exists in relationship and partnership with others? Well, we have taken on board the need to have specific partnerships. So we have what we call our significant partners. And those are people that help us do the job of ministry and mission in the life of the church and out into the community. We couldn't possibly hope to reach a whole city with the amount of resources that we have as one single church. But what we can do is we can partner with other people in order to reach other sectors in the life of the community. I'll give you an example. We have 5 mission groups, 5 mission agencies, 5 mission charities that we work with that actually are our significant mission partners. We encourage them, they help us, they minister things from across the world to us, they tell us stories of things that are happening all over the world. We pray for them, and they also help us in the local community to reach out missionally to people that we wouldn't be able to reach. So there's a number of things that we do, and those mission opportunities, those mission agencies, help us reach out to people who are in other faith communities. Because in Leeds there are 70 nationalities, as you heard me say on Monday, within a half-mile radius of the church. These mission agencies help us engage missionally with people around the church. We also have 12 other partners. So we have 5 mission partners, and we have 12 other partners that use the rooms in our building. We run a children's circus, we run parents and toddlers groups, we have a counselling service. There are groups that use our buildings known as street pastors. If you don't know anything about street pastors, Google it, have a look at it. It's a group of people that go onto the streets most nights, 2 or 3 times a month, deal with people who are rough sleepers, people who have nowhere to go but live on the streets, and they wear a uniform and it says street pastor on the back. People are really inclined to talk to somebody who represent the church on the streets, and part of the street pastor role is to kind of help people and guide them and love them and care for them on the streets. Well, the Leeds Street Pastors is headed up by a member of our own church. In that way, we're able to work in and around the church and out into the community. So we've got all sorts of other things. Let me just look at my list. We work with outlaw motorcyclists. We have men and women in our local fellowship who are bikers, and they, like I used to a number of years back, reach out into the world of outlaw motorcycling with some of these men and women who are far removed from even the margins of the church. They're on the margins of the margins. They're that far removed from the life of church, and we have men and women who are called to those kind of ministries. That's a give and take, that's a love, that's a partnership, that's a friendship. Now, that could all be put down to what John is trying to say here in John 11 by using the word philios, or human love. But the other love, the way it's non-reciprocal, it's not a mutual love, it's something that one person does to another with no reward, no returns. It sounds a bit like the love of God, that, doesn't it? There's a lovely passage in Romans where Paul the Apostle says, God, or Jesus, died for us while we were yet sinners. God didn't need our permission, our love, our help for him to love us. He loved us first before we ever loved him. Now we as a church have taken that on seriously too, and I'll give you one story that will give an example of that. A number of years ago we were having Sunday morning worship, and a young boy came in at the end of our worship service. I'm going to call him Ben. That's not his real name, but because of integrity and because I respect this young man, I'm not going to give you his real name, but we'll call him Ben. And Ben was from the Congo. Ben was 14. And Ben came in at the end of our Sunday morning worship service in Leeds, and his English was not very good, but he could speak French. And we have a number of French speakers in the life of the church, and so a conversation began at the end of our church service. And what Ben told those who were the French speakers in our congregation was the most incredible story. A story of which I'm going to try and repeat to you now. Ben lived in the northeast of Congo, a little village called Uvira, which is on the Lake Tanganyika, and not far from where the trouble spots were in northeast Congo and Rwanda. And we can remember back to some of the stories about the Rwandan genocide a number of years ago. Well, Ben had fled from his village because a number of freedom fighters and soldiers had come into the village and were hunting down pastor and pastor's family. And what happened was the most nightmarish of things to happen to Ben's family. His father was killed, his family were shot, some of them in the main street of the town, and Ben escaped with his uncle and eventually made their way through a long, arduous journey from northeast Congo to the UK. And this was the story that was being told at the back of the church that Sunday. The people who heard the story then related the story to the leaders of our church. And what ensued from that moment was a number of different things. One thing that happened was that we had been saving up as a church money in order for us to reorchestrate our buildings, to refurbish our buildings, and we had a little bit of a building fund in which we had put some money aside in order to do our buildings and to make them look nice. It turned out also in the story that Ben told us that the soldiers had burned the church down, and the church was of a wooden structure, and there was no place for people to worship. And so we as a church very quickly decided that they needed our money more than we needed our money, and we through a number of channels, were able to provide money in order for that community in northeast Congo, in the village of Uvira, to build the first brick building, which happened to be a church, there on the side of the hill, as a testimony to the glory of God. And we dispatched some ambassadors from church, from our local fellowship, to go out 2/3 of the way through the building to see how things were going. And the welcome they received was stupendous. It was an amazing thing. And since then we have seen the building completed and the worshipping community gather back together again, and to almost be at the point of outgrowing that church that was built not so long ago. They have a school attached to the church, and we have sponsored and supported that school as well. And we've had reciprocal visits. So the pastor and his wife, who pastor the church in northeast Congo in Uvira, have been to our church in Leeds, and we have then sent our ambassadors back on a number of occasions, and we've received and welcomed visitors from that church, and we have exchanged friendship. They couldn't offer us anything. They had nothing to offer. They had nothing to give in terms of friendship, because they had nothing. We had an opportunity to give agape love, not philios, not looking for something in return, but to give something that meant that they didn't have to earn our goodwill or our love for them, but because it was agape love, we didn't need something coming our way in order for us to do something good to them. That's the kind of love that God has for each one of us. We don't have to earn it. God is the kind of God in Christ that gives his love to us freely because of the cross of Jesus Christ. So in the story of John 11 this morning, we have two loves mentioned: philios, partnership, friendship, mutual love, and agape, the kind of love that needs no return to make it work. Two loves spoken of there in John 11. I hope that my thoughts to you this morning, even though school has been an online school day, actually fill you with some sense of wonder and amazement. And I trust that as you reflect on these thoughts through the day, and for some of you I know that this is an assignment, that actually this will make sense and will be a blessing to you. So until tomorrow, God bless you and have a good day.